The legend Rox D. Xebec did nothing wrong. And I know people are going to reference Griffin and Berserk and all of that, but I'm serious when I say that this last chapter definitely made me question the character. And the reason why I say this is because 38 years ago in the West Blue, a native cleansing festival took place that happens once every 3 years. How sick. And the location was, of course, God Valley, named that because of the abundant natural resources that are on this island. Now Shanks' father, or assumed father, Garling, killed the king before the event even started. Yes, he was handicapped, but it just shows how different he is to his son, or supposed son, Shanks, and how savage he is compared to the Yonko. They also added troublesome slaves who have committed sins and were just pretty much causing a havoc in Mary Jo was into this competition, to this game, to also be hunted alongside the island civilians. We see of course the Gorosei Saturn, who looks exactly the same as he does in the current story, and I'm thinking Immortal Surgery. Is he from the Void Sentry, who's in attendance at God Valley, which now we got confirmation. We also get Kuma, the warlord, also in attendance of this God Valley incident. He's a very young character though, he's young in age, and he's part of this special race, the Buccaneer race. He's even, because of his race, he's the star of this whole event that's happening on God Valley. And I believe that it could be connected to Joy Boy, since what we saw in the chapter when it comes to Nika, Kuma's race could be the same as Joy Boy, and we saw that big straw hat, of course, during the Reverie arc. So there's definitely a lot to that. I'll save that for another day, but I really want to talk about all the things we learned and how this is related to Rox D. Xebec. And it made me think, is it a bad thing that he was attacking the Celestial Dragons? Of course, like, is it really a bad thing how they're behaving from throughout the story? And of course that last chapter, it was horrendous. Like, they killed Kuma's father just for dancing and just talking loud, yo, with no regret. Like, that was insane. And then I had a realization. Goldie Roger, the Pirate King, was loved by many great people. And then there's Monkey D. Garp, who's also a very loved figure, who just pretty much stamped himself as a legend again by fighting the Blackbeard pirates and saving Kobe. And this is led by his former pupil Aokiji, so I thought that was very cool. So that must mean one thing. If these two enemies, who were really legendary characters and loved characters, teamed up, which is not surprising because, like Roger said it, Garp, I see you as my crew member, because of how many times they fought each other, that must mean that Rox was pure evil, hence the thumbnail. Rox is a monster. And I say this because if he was the one who got attacked, if Roger and Garp said we're gonna attack Rox, not the Celestial Dragons, that means he must be a savage. And I think we should all actually go through what we know about God Valley and Rox and why it's so important when it comes to discussing this heavy-handed topic. Now, surprisingly, a lot of people don't like to talk about it. Captain John was a member of the Rox Pirates, and of course during the early stages of One Piece, this is early, before even Annie's Lobby or Water 7, this was early on, like right when we got into the Grand Line, we saw Buggy trying to get his treasure, and of course Impel Down, Luffy had the thing that could help Buggy get his treasure. And it's just a plot that's very relevant. Captain John is a very surprisingly relevant character, even in Thriller Bark, his zombies there, so there's definitely more to that when it comes to that connection to Rox D. Xebec. I think it gets even deeper after we saw Shanks and Whitebeard meet, and Whitebeard say, the wound I got from that guy aches whenever I look at your face. Now, this is strange because he never said the name, he just is that guy. I think he would have said Roger if he wanted to. And also, I know people say, oh, maybe Odo's trying to hide that Roger and the connection to Shanks and all that, but think about this, yo. He never said that about Ace, who looks pretty similar to Roger. He never said that wound aches when I look at your face. He literally said it doesn't matter if you're Roger's son. So that just makes me think that it's probably Figgle and Garling that gave him that wound and not Roger. And looks to me they're like related because he's a lover boy on the God Valley. Like, all the girls, Celestial Dragon girls, were swooning over him just like the girls swoon over Shanks. And the last thing I want to talk about that really is interesting is Sengoku said if Garp wasn't a hero in the Marines, this is pre-time skip, guys, this is early on, he says if Garp wasn't a hero of the Marines, Garp would suffer. He would suffer for all the consequences, for of course raising Monkey D. Dragon, the world's most wanted man and the leader of the revolutionaries, going strictly against the world government, and Monkey D. Luffy, the supernova, showing how much of a W what he did on God Valley and how much ratings he got from the Celestial Dragons. They love him for life after what he did, taking down the monster Rocks, who's about to go ham on the Celestial Dragons. Now, the first time we actually get like clear-cut reference to like Rocks and that whole era is Big Mom. Big Mom says to Kaido, let's get along like the old times, when talking about trying to take out Luffy and Kaido over that transponder snail conversation. It was very interesting. Right after that, we also see Garp say, before Roger, it was their era. And of course, he's talking about Rocks. And you see also Garp grinning when he said, events will find a way to surpass our imagination. It's crazy because Garp never talks about the Rocks days, but he's definitely smiling. He knows how legendary that incident was. And then of course you have to also talk about Shanks meeting the Gorosei. We all know the connection of Shanks and Figureland from film Red that started it all. And let's be honest here, he's probably talking about Blackbeard, because when he met up with Whitebeard, he was talking about Blackbeard. So I'm assuming he's talking about Blackbeard to the Gorosei. And we now know this connection and why the Gorosei. These Gorosei are strong, guys. Like, yes, Shanks is very powerful. He's a Yonko, probably the strongest character in One Piece right now, just from all we've seen from him. He's one-tapping kid and killer. Like, that's insane, guys. I have to admit, yo, Shanks. And Kaido said it best, yo, Haki reigns supreme. And then, of course, we all know that Shanks is a Haki monster. So the fact that he's standing in front of these monsters, we didn't even know how strong the Gorosei were at the time, just shows. Of course, a little later on, we see, of course, Rocks gets mentioned again, and it's of course Akainu telling Fujitora like the Big Mom and Kaido are teaming up, and he's like, oh my, the return of Rocks. And Akainu tells him to chill out a little bit, and he's saying it's not a legend, it's actually reality. And that's how savage Rocks is, that Fujitora was even like tripping when he heard about this. Yo, Rocks did a number on society, the guys who actually remember. And it's not surprising, yo, guys, we have to say it again. I know it's repetitive, I know I sound like a broken record, but he had some of the strongest characters known to the One Piece mankind under him, not serving as equals, actually under him. He was a captain of these monsters. I'm talking about the Yonko Whitebeard, the world's strongest man, the Yonko Kaido, the world's strongest creature, and the Yonko Big Mom, the monster of a lady. And other legendary pirates I can mention, like the Gold Line Cheeky, the only man to escape Impel Down before Luffy did it. And of course there's Captain John, I just talked about him early on in this video. And then of course there's also Wang Ji, who of course was the leader of the pirate island, which Blackbeard took over. And I'm going to talk about how Blackbeard is connected to Rocks in a minute. And then of course Silver Axe as well. I think this is the greatest crew of all time, and Rocks was the captain of this ginormous crew. He waged war versus the world government, and he wanted to be the king of the world. Not the pirate king, not the king of an island, the king of the world, the One Piece world. He kind of reminds me of Luffy, Dragon, Blackbeard, and just combine them all. The Willa D combination mix of these characters. Rocks was a savage. And as I mentioned, Monkey D. Garp and Goldie Roger teamed up and protected the evil Celestial Dragons. And we know Garp has declined being an admiral, so he doesn't serve the Celestial Dragons, just to go against Rocks. This shows you how much of a savage Rocks has to be. And of course, God Valley, the island in the West Blue, disappeared like Leloucha. And I'm thinking this probably has to do with an ancient weapon that was involved in the battle. Maybe Rocks pulled out an ancient weapon. Maybe the other side pulled out an ancient weapon, the Celestial Dragons. All I know is this battle caused mayhem. And Sengoku said it best, yo, Roger's greatest foe, surpassing Whitebeard and surpassing Monkey D. Garp, the man who served under Rocks and the man who of course went on to take out Rocks. These characters, they got surpassed by Rocks. The greatest foe was Rocks. It wasn't Whitebeard, it wasn't Garp, it was Roxy Xebec. And we actually enjoy characters like Whitebeard and Garp, so we're not gonna like this dude, guys. We're not gonna like Rocks. His personality's gonna be on the same level as Blackbeard, even worse probably when it comes to savageness and ruthlessness and brutality. It's gonna be insane. Of course, Big Mom talks about how on the day Rocks fell into ruin, she gave Kaido that mythical Zoan, just adding on to how much God Valley had the natural resources of legend proportions that Kaido's Delphi was from the island God Valley. Even when Luffy punched the shit out of Kaido, who he remembers, the guys who can fight him, the few guys who can fight him, the legends, 4 out of the 5 guys were involved in the God Valley incident. I'm talking about Whitebeard, who's under Rocks, Roger, who fought Rocks, who of course he's trying to be the king of the world in this incident, and Red Hair Shanks, who was a baby during this incident and like honestly was found on God Valley. 4 out of the 5 guys. That is crazy to say, guys. It's just makes it more and more interesting. And of course, at the end of Wano, Big Mom, the savage of all savage, the same lady who killed and ate her mom and her fellow orphanage siblings, the same lady who killed her own biological son, this lady said it's not good to trust Rocks to Kaido. That means that Rocks has to be even worse than Big Mom when it comes to evilness, guys. That is saying something. Now, of course, I do want to say this. Kaido asks, like during this flashback arc of Kaido, he asks why the Celestial Dragons boss us around, and pretty much says to fight back. He's not a political chip. And then also he says that pretty much joining Rocks 44 years ago, he joins Rocks at the age of 15 because of course Whitebeard tells him to go meet Rocks because Rocks wants to meet him, and that's a very interesting scene right there that we have to see. Probably gonna see it soon. And of course Big Mom then says we are going to God Valley. It wasn't Rocks. Big Mom went to report to Kaido. That means Big Mom and Whitebeard probably had a separate meeting with Rocks about going to God Valley. Probably Shiki was there too as well. And then of course Rock's crew fell and Kaido dipped out on Big Mom and she was yelling his name. And then of course 10 years later we see Kaido talks about how the Rock's crew will be the focus. The world will revolve around the Rock's crew now. We see the Korozumi lady, of course, who had Shiki's face. She mentions that incident on Gon Valley, so she probably was there, and that's probably where she touched Shiki's face, of course, because she had Bon Clay's Delphin ability. And then of course he also says Joy Boy is the man who will beat me. And that's crazy. The man will beat me. One day is Joy Boy. And I think Luffy's Delphin ability, the Nika Nika no Mi, the mythical Zoan human fruit, I think it was up for grabs during the God Valley incident. I think Rocks wanted his Delphin ability because he knows the ties to Buccaneer race and the ties to, of course, how powerful this mythical Zoan is. And I think this makes this arc even spicier. I also want to say this. I believe Monkey D. Dragon was there on God Valley. And the reason why I say this is because, let's be honest here, his design looks very similar to Roxy Xebec. He's a Will D member. And also, he's going straight against the world government like Rocks. But I do also want to say this. If Kuma and Ivankov, his most trusted revolutionaries, were there, he has to be there. He would be around the same age as like pre-time skip Luffy. So around the same age, similar to like Kaido. He would be a young guy, of course, but he still would be a fighter, I think. He doesn't like fighting. Don't forget Vegapunk said that. But I think this incident probably angered Garp, and what made Monkey D. Dragon motivated to become a revolutionary was Rocks. And like, let's be honest here, he probably hates Celestial Dragons for what happened on God Valley. I believe Sabo, the man who saw the king of the world, Imu, like, I think how we saw Imu transform and the Gorosei transform, and he's like this hellish at the top, how disgusting it was. I think Rocks also saw Imu, and that's why his goal was to become king of the world, because he knew there was a king of the world. And I also want to say this, the strongest crew alive of all savages who didn't like getting along. How did Rocks get this crew? Well, maybe he knew it doesn't matter if they get along. Just to go up against the world government, the top of the top, you need monsters, captains of other legendary crews to team up. That's how you take a W against the Gorosei and the Imu. I think Rock's ambition was crazy, and that's why Garp and Roger teaming up, he probably never expected it to be Garp and Roger teaming up to take him out. He probably had bigger goals of taking out the Gorosei and Imu. So yeah, the point of this video I'm trying to say is the fact that I even question did Rocks do nothing wrong makes me think Rocks did even more worse things than what we saw in the last chapter. He's probably even more savage than that, and I want to see it all in details. I want to see all the evil things Rocks does, because if Rocks not an evil character, I have to admit, guys, I'm Team Rocks, yo. I'm not Team Garp and Roger. I'll be Team Rocks, but only time will tell, and I'm excited to find out more of what Ichiro reveals to us in this flashback. One Piece is on fire. I can't wait to see the next chapter. I know there's a break, but I can't wait, guys.